It was a pretty eventful year for Nigeria on the international scene, particularly in the pursuit of stolen funds stashed abroad by corrupt or former or serving functionaries. But that's not even the crux of the matter. Quite a number of things also happened in the faraway country. Now, we're talking about the United States of America, which also had a president-elect who will be sworn in next month, specifically January 20th. How all of this will affect Nigeria, and even the new, lady who's representing Nigeria at the UN. These are some of the things that we're talking about when we say global politics. And we're not joined by our experts here. Dr. Dapo Thomas, he's of the Department of International Relations, Lagos State University, and Dr. Gani Lal, he's also a foreign affairs analyst. Gentlemen, good to have this moment with you. Looking at what has happened, especially, let's talk about the United States election first and see how that just might change things for us in 2017. For 2016, we saw that moment, and it's still making headlines in other parts of the world, specifically Russia and the United States. But for that in Nigeria, does it have anything that Nigeria would say has defined its foreign relations with other parts of the world? And you can also put this side by side with also what has happened in the Gambia.
Yes, thank you very much. You are aware that Nigeria is a leading force in Africa, and as such, what happens in any part of the world clearly have implication for our foreign policy. Now, the election of Trump, I think I discussed that one here before, and I said that Nigeria should not expect much from the United States, given the disposition of the new president. But we will not be disappointed if we do not go there with a bag of requests and demands. At the same time, if you look at the body language of Trump and some of the utterances that he has made, there's a wake-up call too for some African leaders who Trump have accused, of bastardizing their people, sit tight leader who will not want to leave office by changing constitutions. And an example was that of Jammeh, who has considered defeat and suddenly changed his mind. So it has to take a Nigerian big stick, to warn him that if he cause any problem there, you will face the consequence.
I like
so
Nigeria's big stick.
Oh yes, Nigeria had to lead a delegation of some countries through the multilateral platform to warn him that if he causes any problem there, he's going to face, he will be forced to leave there. He will get the same treatment with the guy in Africa, so what is his name now? Gbagbo. So, and I think he has recapitulated now by saying that he has accepted defeat. So, generally speaking, 2017, Nigeria is going to be very busy in handling such issues from Africa, ECOWAS, all parts of the world, the new order in the United States. So Nigeria is going to be seized with all those issues in 2017.
I know how it is, inching to comment, but I'm forced to ask this question. Looking at what is happening, Dr. Thomas, the issue between the Russian government and the government of the United States, seeing what has also happened in the Gambia. I recall that once upon a time we had this non-alignment, policy. Is it likely that that's what we're following now? Because some other nations are just watching from the sidelines, seeing how it unfolds, because these are two world powers. For 2016, we didn't quite see much of our involvement in international politics apart from what we just saw in the Gambia.
Well, I think the concept or policy of non-alignment is not applicable any longer. It's percolated, or maybe let's say it's died naturally as soon as as soon as the Cold War ended. So in that light, I don't want to believe that there is still anything called non-alignment. If you are non-aligned, I mean, if you talk of neutrality, if you talk of observing situations before you take a position, it's a different thing from being non-aligned, which means you are not actually supporting a particular country. But what is going on now between Russia and US is very interesting, because we had an Obama now who had expelled 35 Russian diplomats from the country, and we have a Lavrov recommending 35 American diplomats in Russia for expulsion, but Putin, put it in abeyance, believing that his friend Trump is coming to power very soon, in a matter of weeks. However, I am very careful not to, to see how this is going to play out, because from my own experience and from my own study, I have not seen a situation, particularly in international relations and international politics, where relationship between two presidents, talking specifically about Russia and US, having a dominant policy direction or policy influence on what is going to happen to the foreign policy direction of US. The US is insulated. The US foreign policy is insulated from the personal wish and personal interest of the president. It's not like an African country. It's not like any African country where the personal interest of the leader may show the direction, you understand, where the country goes. But in US, the policy is entrenched, is structured. It is the American interest that is paramount. So how Trump is going to impose his own policy, his own personal interest on the United States, that's what I'm still expecting to see, because it's going to be very difficult. If it's an African country, yes, it's possible that, well, Putin is my friend, so we can work on this. Because in international politics, I have not seen a situation where two rivals, particularly when you have historical antecedents, where these two countries, since 1945, have shown themselves as rivals. I don't know how they are going to play this role. Our rivals are now going to be friends. It's going to be very difficult and complex to discuss, to watch out, and I'm waiting patiently.
So what do you expect 2017 to be like? Dr. Lawal, let's wrap up this conversation starting with you. Now, especially with Nigeria's relationship with the rest of the world, including the Asian countries. We had a lot of to and fro of the president, visiting, taking along with him some private sector, private entrepreneurs who wanted to do business. And it seems as if the relationship is looking good. For you in 2017, what are you expecting to see?
Yeah, we still going to continue with the trajectory of 2016, given the fact that the domestic policy actually shapes your international policy. Don't forget that the pursuit of national interest has been the cardinal point of any foreign policy. Insofar Nigeria is battling with corruption, insecurity, and the need for economic development, our foreign policy is still going to take that shape. Presidents will still do more traveling in terms of looking for investment, and Nigeria too will also have to brace up for new opportunities, especially in technology, in the 21st century. So in 2017, Nigeria will still continue with the trajectory of 2016. And so far, we still have these challenges at home.
All right, Dr. Thomas, a lot of talk has been going on with regards to Nigeria's foreign policy, and good thing that Dr. Lawal actually mentioned it. But for you, in 2017, what should our foreign policy really comprise of?
Well, let me explain that our foreign policy is a bit on the dull side. We are achieving, we are moving, but the drama of foreign policy vision, the drama of foreign policy activity is not there. Why? Because our foreign affairs minister is not visible. You can hardly drive any foreign policy without the foreign affairs minister being visible. Hardly do you even have students who know who the foreign affairs minister is. And then, the president himself is very quiet, is gentle. Then you don't have a gentle man or a gentle person. There is need for drama, there is need for activity, there is need for some razzmatazz in international politics. When people are still talking of Bolaji Akiyemi, talking of Gambari, Ibrahim Gambari, talking of Ikewachuku Anku, it's because of the color which they added to foreign policy vision and foreign policy drive. So this is my advice, that we need to inject some kind of drama, some kind of visibility into our foreign policy operation.
Fine place to leave this, and we're hoping that 2017 as well will see most of our ambassadors in their positions, because we still have so many others yet on field. We'd like to say thank you, Dr. Thomas and Dr. Gani Lawal, for spending time with us on a review of 2016 in the foreign affairs world.